And welcome everybody to another Nothing Like a Good Book. And this one is too. I want you to guess a little bit. If I said to you my special guest on the show is Gordan J Hilsman, he was born and raised in the U.S. state of Iowa, ordained a Catholic priest in 1967, and he resigned from the priesthood in 77, married to Nancy for 45 years, and he has 3 grown children. Now, a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry, master's degrees in human development and theology, and a doctorate in pastoral counseling. Quite a learned man. Welcome, Gordon. Nice to have you.
Hey, it's good to be here, Mark.
What was it, do you think, Gordon, that led you to the priesthood?
Well, it was magical when I was a boy.
Started way back then, huh?
Yes, oh yes. And in Catholic grade school, I was fascinated with the virtues that we were taught. We weren't taught very much about them, but they inspired me and still do.
Well, you lasted 10 years in the Catholic priesthood. Just share a little bit about your life in that role. What did you favor most in that role?
What did I favor?
Mostly, yes. There's a lot of things a priest does, right?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things was preaching. I liked being able to create words about how things should be, which is what that is, and try to inspire people. It was so I used to play songs with my guitar, and also I did some teaching, Catholic high school and grade school. That was just facing those people, those kids, and it was inspiring. I liked being a priest, actually.
Okay. Well, this sort of leads into your writing, which we're going to get into. A BS degree in chemistry, master's degrees in human development and theology, and a doctorate in pastoral counseling. Was it during these studies that you felt the need to write?
Yes, you have to write. I didn't start writing until I was in my 40s. And, you have to write in order to be a clinical pastoral educator, because you have to describe students accurately. They want to be chaplains in places like hospice and addiction recovery and, where there's no nonsense. And so you have to describe them. And that I found out that I could do that fairly well. And then that got me inspired, and some people told me, said, you can really write a paragraph. So that got me going in my 40s. I'm way past that.
A late bloomer, huh? A late bloomer. Well, now you're the author of 5 nonfiction books. 3 are in your field of clinical education. 1 on intimate spirituality. And the one we're going to be talking about soon, the latest one on character of top politicians, titled Assessing the Character of Candidates for National Political Office in Search of a Collaborative Spirit. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But would it be fair to say, Gordon, that you were fascinated by the concepts of virtue all through your life? Catholic school, college, theology school, with your first publication, Intimate Spirituality. And with a subheading of the Catholic way of love and sex. That sounds unusual.
I think so. But at the time, I was in my mid-30s and had been a priest for 10 years. And I got highly influenced by romance, which I'd not had much experience with in adolescence and youth. And those 2 things, Catholic culture and sexual love or intimate love, just were very powerful to me. And it seemed like there's no preaching about it, because Catholic clergy don't experience the profound spiritual effect that intimate love has on you. And I wanted to make that clearer, and I actually wanted priests to read that,
right?
So they could appreciate, how people live.
Well, I think you were trying to using virtues as traits people need to develop as they negotiate intimate relationships for success in love and growth as human beings. I mean, this is your overview, right?
Exactly. The book is actually organized around virtues that when you get really close to someone, you really need to change, basically, in order to keep that thing alive. Most everybody finds that out.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to be doing is developing some of these characteristics that you don't have.
Your next book was Spiritual Care in Common Terms, How Chaplains Can Effectively Record the Spiritual Needs of Patients in the Medical Record. All right. What was the message here, Gordon?
The message is human to human care. So you have in a hospital physicians who are doing their best to keep you alive and help you recover from things.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some chaplains that have a whole way of thinking about people, but those chaplains need to be communicating to those physicians.
Right.
And so this book is about how you can write a paragraph about a patient that a doctor will read, because it's human.
Yeah,
It's not very often, or not often, is not religious. It's the best of humanity.
The personal and interpersonal struggles patients are having, right? That
yes.
that may impede or exacerbate their medical condition and recovery, for that matter.
Yeah, I have related to and have some friends, they're physicians for a long time, and they all, pretty much all of them, know that almost every patient has issues that preoccupy them.
Mm-hmm.
And they avoid talking about them because they know they're not good at it, and they know that they can't help people with that they need to stick with their frameworks of understanding,
right,
help people medically. So that's why I wrote that book.
Well, I got all the covers of these books, by the way, folks, on the site, on markbishopmedia.com. The bio and a photo there of Gordon that you can read a lot more. But these books are all available, and you'll see the covers of them. Now, the next one, before we get into the most recent, the next year, in fact, you published How to Get the Most Out of Clinical Pastoral Education, right? As the first book that describes the essentials of the standard clinical education for spiritual caregiving in healthcare and psychiatric facilities, right? So that's the book was aimed at that, along those lines.
Yes. The word clinical is important there. Physicians say if you get rid of that word, you're going to lose a lot of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of education is a small group that agree to give each other direct feedback about how they are caring for a given patient.
Right.
They write about it, and then they show the writing to the group, and then they spend an hour and a half talking about one patient, basically one conversation,
mm-hmm.
because it gets into what was enkindled in that chaplain by this patient that kept them from being very effective.
I see. Deep psychological stuff here, mate.
It's pretty much psychological, and it is theological too, because all of these people have gotten into chaplaincy because they have some kind of call or something to religion.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get into it, they find it's human to human care that's necessary.
Right. Well, only a couple of years ago, the fourth came up, a book that you have written. You've published Confrontation in Spiritual Care, an anthology for spiritual caregivers. So this was to augment the standard core of conveyed empathy in spiritual care with the frequent need to confront patients and others to be congruent and authentic. Be authentic in caregiving. Well, let me ask you this, Gordon. How's caregiving today?
How's caregiving? I think it's evolving like like the rest of the world, but it's awfully slow, and it always is. Evolution is always very slow.
Mm-hmm.
But what's evolving in, you could say, most of all, is care.
Yeah.
You have how much different are people now than they were 50,000 years ago?
Huh. Right.
If you go back far enough, you can see how far we've come. We're much more able to care for each other, even though there's a lot of holes in that.
Right.
And we keep working on that. Keep trying to do it better.
Yeah, it's got to get better. There's a lot of horrific stories out there. That's why I asked you. But anyway, you're listening to Nothing Like a Good Book with Mark Bishop, and my guest author is Gordan J Hilsman. He's published, by the way, a lot on the writers' platform of Substack, over 25 weekly essays on the subject of assessing the character of candidates for political office. And this is the theme of his current book, which is titled Assessing the Character of Candidates for National Political Office, subtitled In Search of a Collaborative Spirit. Boy, talk about a topical book at the timing that it is now. It makes the case that the character of top politicians has such great influence on their functioning in governance that voters need to take seriously the specifics of their character before electing them. Well, this is a hot topic, or what, Gordon? I mean, after everything I've witnessed over the last 4 years, and I'm referring to ex-President 45, who's going to be 47, how does this book stand up now after this unbelievable election?
Well, I think we're just getting started. We still almost completely ignore character in the election process.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that make sense? Some of the early people like James Madison, who wrote the Constitution,
mm-hmm.
said that character and virtue is the main thing. And I think Biden even said a while back that all that we do in these campaigns has very little to do with the ability to do the job of president.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are deciding who should be president based on how well they can entertain, basically, and manage their own image so they can get elected. But we don't have any real measures of how they can be successful in this very serious job.
Chapter 2. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying I'm pretty opinionated about that, but I guess that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, well, there you go, assessing the character of candidates for national political office. And Chapter 2 of this book briefly describes the evolution of the concept of virtue over the past 3 millennia by promoting the thinking and the writing of 20, in fact, great historical figures. Hammurabi, Confucius, Plato, Moses, on to Benjamin Franklin, and on the subject of virtue. That's interesting, isn't it?
Very fascinating to me. It seems that whole concept has evolved gradually over the last 3,000 years in various parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now these concepts are excellent to look for in candidates. So you say 20 different characters, not so much, but there are 20 virtues or concepts or traits.
Yes, traits
that people have that or not that we can look at and see, wow, does this person,
mm-hmm.
are they an honest person? Do they have a sense of fairness
right
about them? And are they dedicated to the benefit, the good of human beings and the improvement of humanity?
The book then proceeds to describe the 20 traits. You're touching on traits, and their relevance to evaluating top politicians as necessary in some measures for fitness to serve the government and promote the evolutionary well-being and progress of the people. We could talk all day, I guess, on traits, which you've touched on with that. Fascinating. The book is assessing the character of candidates for national political office. Very deep, very well written. Makes a great gift, I think, this book, with Christmas coming up and Thanksgiving. It also suggests that to pursue the evaluation of political candidates, this I agree with profusely, there will be necessary changes to be made to include a small group encounter process and more challengingly town hall type venues to assess character before candidacy in every U.S. state. I think that's very wise, Gordon.
Well, I think so. It's kind of visionary, and it maybe seem idealistic right now, but in the end, if you're going to play in the NFL, or if you're going to be even dancing or you're a musician, people look very carefully at you as a person. But we don't have standards like that for politicians. There really are no standards of character or almost anything else.
Yeah, it's almost like people are only thinking about their pocket right now. You know, it seems to be, how am I surviving? I've got to pay the bills. I've got to go to work. I've got to do this, got a job, got this, got the car payment. It's all I care about, the economy, blah, blah, blah. And then I get up tomorrow and I do it all over again. You can do what you want to do, but I just think your policies might be better. It's sort of come down to that, hasn't it?
I think that's pretty well said, yeah.
You know, so that's the character. But what really inspired you to write this book? What was the flame that got you going?
Well, I worked as a chaplain and a clinical educator in addiction recovery in particular, and in mental health to some degree, and in hospice. And those are areas where, you know, grandstanding and image management and all that just are out of place.
Right.
And so I saw how some of these virtues are so vital for those main challenges in life.
Right.
And then I got to say, you know, when I got into watching politics and saying, my gosh, why aren't we looking for these characteristics in our top leaders? And there's this whole idea of collaboration, which we don't have much of. It's really hard for Congress to really get their act together and make decisions about things like climate change.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot, of course. You know, all they've done for 4 years is bicker and fight and get nothing done.
Well, it's not.
You know,
it's longer than 4 years. That's part of the trouble. With so many people are so disgusted with not being able to have any progress. And now so many of them are now turned to finding it a strong man that can do stuff and get it done.
That's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing. So it is important to assess character in politicians. And we can practically assess character in political candidates. There's different ways. I like the town hall bit because it can be very personal, and the answers have to be given. Sometimes television can hide all of that. Where do you think these traits or virtues come from?
Well, we were just mentioning where they come from. They're from historically, it's been a kind of thing that people do is criticize top leaders. You know, what's wrong with our leaders? And as they did that, you know, in certain places, in certain ways, they fashioned language to describe what they thought leaders needed to be. Plato, what's an ethical leader of an ethical state? And Confucius, you know, so he was a teacher, and he spent his whole life trying to convince the kings around him that we need to teach kids virtue if we're ever going to have a great state, a great country. And of course, he failed completely during his life. But and you know, if you just go into the lives of each one of those world figures that wrote about this, you know, it's pretty convincing.
Well, let me ask you this then, Gordon. And aren't the words for these traits religious, even Christian?
Well, they are not. These people that developed them Some of them were prophets like Moses and Isaiah, but for the most part, they've been promoted by religion, but they're basically human, the best of humanity. If you look at the whole list of who has influenced this evolution of virtue language, they're not all religious. They're just good people whose thinking and writing have addressed this thing about leaders and how can we help leaders actually,
right?
While they're leading. There's a medieval thinker whose name escapes me at the moment, but he basically said to be a king and to be virtuous just don't fit together. Because either if you get a king that is already virtuous, having that much power is going to corrupt him.
Right.
And if you get a corrupt guy, and it was in guys as a top leader, the people, when he gets in touch with his power to help people, he's liable to be converted and not be such a rat.
Why do you use the word quasi-clinical in your suggested assessment process?
Well, because the word clinical speaks about direct observation in using a language that people agree on and an objective point of view. It's so easy to just blat out cute words, funny words, in talking about politicians that don't really help. No one can really follow it. It doesn't, it's not really serious. So clinical, I believe it inspires people to be more careful with their language.
Okay.
And their description.
So why is challenge then? Let me ask you this. Why is challenge, even confrontation, useful in character assessment?
Well, because all of us, and especially people that are in the public eye, are so focused on image management and they're not going to be themselves unless you ask them a pointed question. And then they're going to have to struggle to think about it. And in doing that, they're going to learn what people need, what people need in them. So if you just, it's in addiction recovery. If you just keep on supporting somebody, they're just going to die. They're going to keep drinking until they die, or using, or whatever. You're going to have to confront them to get them to be more honest. And they can't really recover without really rigorous honesty about themselves. That's oversimplified, but true.
Fair enough. Well, we touched earlier on small group encounters, like town halls and so on. Why do you urge, for you personally, why do you urge the use of small group encounters in assessing character?
Because people are different in small groups, especially if the group itself is committed to direct feedback to each other. And if you take, for example, you take a group and put a candidate in a group that is just ordinary people that do really well at their work, a policeman, a nurse, a high school teacher of political science, addictions counselor, and you put them in there for a couple hours and have them answer questions and follow-up questions and statements. It will be a profound experience. They will get at the character of that person.
You're right.
You did right. Person will come out of that person will come out of there and never forget it. And they'll be somewhat changed, most likely, unless they have a really severe pathology.
Right. Well, in your mind, then, how could state election boards keep their character assessment processes nonpartisan? Because that's an issue.
Isn't that is a huge question. I make an effort at that with this book. I do not mention the words Democrat or Republican. not once.
In Australia, it works that you've got your two major parties, always the same old, same old. One gets in and destroys the country, does some good things, but then leaves them, billions of dollars in debt, and then the other one comes in and has to, punish everybody till they can at least pay the debt back. But we've got independence. We've got independence, and you can vote for independence, but unfortunately, their vote can also go to one of the other two. So if one of the other two don't win. Now, look, the book is called Assessing the Character of Candidates for National Political Office. It is written by Gordon J Hilsman. Now, the D in the MIN, is that for ministries?
Yes.
In search of a collaborative spirit. Now, your site at https / and so on, GordonJHilsman.com. That is your personal site. And then there's another site that's called spiritualclinician.com. Can this book, and for that matter, any of your others, can they be purchased on these sites at all, Gordon?
No, I haven't set that up.
Might be a good idea for you to do so. That's a lot of authors are doing that these days.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Where else is it selling then? I guess Amazon.
Well, it's Amazon and just about every other major bookseller.
Okay.
It's easy to find, actually.
All right, that's good. Because as I was saying before, I think it's a very good book as a gift. Very in depth, very heavy, I think is one word to say, but very clinical is another. They can find you on twitter.com, GordyBoy55. Your Facebook page is also facebook.com/Gordon, the author. A lot of people like to go to social media these days and so on. But I'll putting all of this up on your bio, and that's also, of course, that can be seen by the listeners. I wish you all the best in the world with this book, Gordon. A couple of your others are selling very well, I believe. And how is this? This is only just out of the box, right? Out of the startup plank. So how's it doing?
I would say not as well as I would like. I'd like more people to know about it. Mm-hmm. And so, no, it isn't doing as well as a couple of the other ones. Maybe the title's too long or whatever, but
but the title is what it's about, isn't it? Assessing the.
It is.
I guess when you wrote the thing, did you have the title in mind in the beginning, or did that come later?
No, this is the original title. I couldn't think of a catchy thing in a few words that would really signal what it's about. So I went with this.
Well, because this is what it's about. It's about assessing the character of candidates for national political office by Gordon J Hilsman. All right, my friend. Well, look, I hope it does well. I think there's a lot in this that a lot of people. I think it's timely. I really do. I just think. Once this book gets out there, I think it's going to make people think,
Great.
All right.
Great. That's what we need to do, I think.
All right. Well, thanks for taking time out. I appreciate having you on Nothing Like a Good Book, and this is certainly a good book. Gordon J Hilsman, ladies and gentlemen. The book, again, is Assessing Political Candidate Character, or the Character of Candidates for National Political Office, right? It's a wordy title, but it is what it is. Okay.
It is.
In search of a collaborative spirit. Thank you, Gordon. Good luck. And I hope it really does well for you.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.